Good morning from Daytona International Speedway. We had so much fun last night with night practice at the Roar before the 24. We thought we better do it again.
We're here.
We're here.
Why not?
Exactly. And we had so many folks message us letting us know how much they enjoyed the show last night. And we say a hearty thank you. 12,000 people at one point were watching a live stream of a test without graphics, without a pit reporter, no bells and whistles, just race cars and a couple of race fans chatting about the cars on the track, and that's what we're going to do for the next hour.
At one point, I saw over 112,000 total views, and we had dinner in Daytona. We're going to have brunch here at the beach. The happy hour, so to speak, the final practice session for the WeatherTech Championship cars, and looking at the weather. And it seems like almost every day it jumps a level. And this morning, right now, it's currently 63 degrees Fahrenheit for our international fans, looking at 17 Celsius.
Yes.
It is a little bit cloudy. The haze is burning off. We do have some rain expected for around lunchtime, 12 to 2, but the morning, it's going to be sunny, it's going to be warm, it's going to be fast, it's going to be fun, and a great opportunity once again. We had fun at night showing the cars under the lights and all the different trim that the cars utilize for the spotters up on top of the grandstand, but also for those folks in the pits. That way they can see when their vehicle is coming in the darkness. So today, it's all about checking out the new liveries in the sun, and we've got so many cool liveries, stories to talk about over the next hour. Fun meter's going to be pegged, and we're glad that the folks who are following along with us across the globe are here with us, and just a bunch of race car nerds doing race car things.
I love it. That's what we're here for. That, of course, is Matt Yoakum. I'm Ryan Marine. Great to have you folks joining us. And we'll try and do what we did last night. We'll lay out a little bit. We'll let you listen to the cars. Good news, the Valkyrie, the engine change, is complete. It's actually already queued up, second in line at the end of the pit lane. So the Heart of Racing guys, they're chomping at the bit to get out on track. And we'll make sure you get a chance to listen to it ripping around this track here over the next hour or so. And we'll also try and take your questions, whether they come in on social media or in the chat. Can't guarantee we'll see everything, but we'll try and answer the ones that we can. What do you have your eyes on here, Matt? This is the final all-field session of the Roar for the WeatherTech Championship. There's a bronze driver-only test at the end of the day today, but this is the last tune-up before it gets real next week, or later on this week, I suppose.
I think if you look at this final practice session, it's much like when you go to the local driving range. You'll have somebody hitting balls with the driver. You'll have somebody working on their chip shots. They'll have someone working with their mid-range irons. And that's really what we're going to be looking at up and down pit lane. Teams have different agendas of what they want to check off in this final session. You talk about the different teams. Look at, Cadillac Racing with the Wheeling guys from Action Express, the 31. Jack Aiken and Earl Bamber are expected to be the two that will be behind the wheel of the 31 for this session. Earl's been pretty much on old tires, so they're going to keep that trend going, so that way the data that they get, I love him. He's like the master chemist in a way with chassis setups, and Ian Watt, the lead technical person at Action Express. He's got a couple tweaks that he wants to try. And since Earl's only been on older tires, they're going to keep that. So that way, all the feedback that he gives Ian Watt, it all gels with everything that they've done. It's not A and B. It's more like A and A minus.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it stays consistent. And it goes to show just how deeply these teams think about their run plans for a test session like this. Getting a look at the cars lined up here in the pit lane. We've had a bunch of comments already today. We did yesterday as well about our cameraman, Mauro, the great shots that he gets. And he is a true artist. There is no one with a camera in the pit lane quite like Mauro.
You mentioned an artist. He paints the cars, and it has such a great art form going right over the mirror right there, going down the quarter panel, underneath the wing, and then just keep flowing over the next car to give our fans all across the globe a chance to see new driver names, new pairings, new liveries, and he he adds that period to his sentence. He puts it all, says 1,000 words without saying one. And you know what? We had so much fun last night hearing all the cars cranking up, and we're about a minute away from the cars rolling off the grid. So you know what, Ryan? I think for folks that are either having, depending on where they are in the world, either having breakfast, lunch, dinner, or nighttime drinks, who knows?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and give them a little bit of feast from pit lane here at Daytona.
sounds of the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship here at Daytona International Speedway. A moment ago, Lone Star Racing and their Mercedes with an issue headed down to the Le Mans chicane, staying well out of the way of the cars that are still at speed. Something seems to be amiss for that team. And a couple of comments saying, thanks for letting us listen to the cars. Look, we know, we're the same. We want to listen to the cars too. So we'll do that intermittently over the next 55 minutes of this session to let you listen in, but also want to keep you up to date on what's going on. 5 minutes in, and it's Porsche Penske quickest so far. Kevin Estra in the number 6 car ahead of Jordan Taylor for Cadillac Wayne Taylor Racing in the 40. Earl Bamber on those used tires Matt was talking about, third fastest. Only 3 of the GTP cars have really turned a lap in anger, and even those are still a ways off of the ultimate pace. Still early in the session with a cool track here this morning. Dane Cameron quickest in LMP2 for AO Racing in that gold Spike the Dragon. Spike painted up in gold to celebrate their championship season of a year ago. Saw a question real quick about Rexy's gold tooth, and that was celebrating the championship that team had in GTD Pro a couple of years ago, and so that's why one of the teeth on Rexy, the Porsche 911, is painted up in gold.
We're taking you basically from the sofa to the stands. Some great bird's eye view of different cars going through the infield, but also up on the banking. And one of the cars we showed a little bit earlier was the 12 Aaron Thielens in that Vassar Sullivan Lexus 12 car. We documented last night in our practice session that they had an issue, something amiss with the power plant. It didn't blow and drop oil on the track, but it did give a significant engine warning light. So they had shut the power down, towed it back. In fact, they held the 14 from going out for a couple of minutes and until they plugged in and they could diagnose what the engine issue was on the 12, plugged into the 14. That looked great, so then they let the 14 continue on with practice, but being very precautionary because you don't want to take a small issue and make a significant issue where now you're going to lose a lot of time, track time, you name it. But they changed the engine on the 12 and all is good. Aaron Thielens behind the wheel now. And Felipe Nasser, you're watching him go up into through the infield. There's also the 6 you mentioned. They are currently P1 now. Felipe Nasser P5 early in this session, and what an off season he has had. Had a shot to win the championship again. His teammates on the 6 pulled that off, but locked and loaded this year. A couple young guns that he's going to share the car with throughout the season. But also in December, and you're going to have to go on the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast next Wednesday to hear the whole story. But he proposed to his longtime girlfriend, Julia, and he did it in a way that guys would love, because it created some question marks in her mind of like, why am I getting this for Christmas? So not to give away much more of the story, you're going to have to tune in to the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast next week. We've got so many stars with great stories that are going to be on the season opening episodes. So make sure you go to IMSA's YouTube page or wherever you chase your favorite podcast at Apple or Spotify. You can listen to the show there.
That's quite a tease. And that comes out Wednesday.
Cannot wait. We've got people that actually show tattoos.
Okay.
That are significant because it has a connection to race victories. And who that might be, what it could end up looking like if they win the Rolex 24 again.
Okay.
The entire team may be staying the night in Daytona and heading down to Main Street and getting some tats. But stories like that, we try to take you off the grid, off pit lane, like you're hanging out with your buddies by a fire pit.
Yep.
Having a little hydration and then just letting loose on cool stories.
And that will be one to look forward to when that show drops on Wednesday. We got a question a moment ago, I think it's a good one, asking what the feedback has been on the new Michelin tires. We talked a little bit last night about the new look of them. And somebody, we were saying, we kind of thought it looked like maybe lizard scales or snake skin. But I saw something about, one commenter said they looked kind of like the dry, cracked desert landscape. And I kind of see that in it as well. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, we'll get a picture at some point here of what the new Michelin looks like right out of the mold. I know that the thought process was to make tires that would warm up faster, help in the overnight, help in a championship. Now, well, across the board, here they've never really had tire warmers in the U.S., but in the World Endurance Championship, they've gone that route, and they were hoping to get a tire that would warm up a little bit quicker. Have you heard much from the teams and drivers, their initial feedback?
I spoke to, the 22 locks up that right front. I spoke to Alexander Sims when I was leaving the garage this morning, and I asked him just where they were on things. He said the Corvette bunch felt pretty good because we're just trying to learn the new tire a little bit. And I said, do you get a significant different feel 2026 tire versus the old tire? He says, it's not that big of a change, but there is a little change. And so you're trying to just pinpoint all the little nuances, because when something is new, you have to go and run through your system of what you're looking for feel-wise. And he said that's exactly what they're doing. So it's a nice change. He goes, but it is a change.
Well, it goes to show, even for teams that have the same car, the same driver lineup as a year ago, why a test like this is so valuable. There are little tweaks in the regulations, or when you get a new tire thrown your way.
Oh, and there's a great shot of the Mustang, both the 64 and 65. We saw the 65 pulling out, the 64's in the box. And another one of those teams that has a new livery, new branding. They've gone from Ford Performance to Ford Racing. Also changed up predominantly from the red, white, and blue to the blue and white. And we touched on last night, we had a couple different questions just about how teams can tell the difference and the different light packages that you see. Now, right there on the 64, you can see the light up in the window. And the 64 has that yellow piping. Now, the 65 will have blue piping in the window. So that way, when they're out on the track or they're coming down here on the front straightaway, it's easy to pick apart which car is which. So your eye immediately goes blue, okay, that's the 65. And it's little things like that that not only helps the spotter, but helps the guys on pit lane. And you'll see that through all the different cars.
Ford has a lot to be excited about here this weekend. The defending champions of this event in GTD Pro, and a 1-3 finish.
Scored 2 of those podiums last year.
Exactly, in this race, and that was a big, big deal for Ford. In fact, subsequent to winning here, Ford took the winning car and winning drivers up to Detroit to the manufacturing facility that actually produces the Mustang. And a GT3 car starts its life in an assembly line just the way that your road-going Ford Mustang or Chevy Corvette or what have you does. And they took that car and brought it back to where it was born effectively. Let the people who would have built it initially see it, ask questions to the drivers. It was a really neat event, and it shows to a degree the commitment that Ford has to sports car racing, to endurance racing. It's a big part of their heritage. And they come back this year with an updated car that should be even stronger than the previous version was that won here a year ago.
When you look at how they build these cars, and you mentioned going back to Detroit, and they'll take, it's like, I love the GT style old school racing where it comes off an assembly line.
Yeah.
And so they will bring from Detroit down to Mooresville, North Carolina, to the Multimatic Motorsports shop, and essentially they'll start cutting on the car. They've got about 100 templates that they put all over the car, and they start cutting out different sections to then put in more of a race strength area, a cage, a rear clip, you name it, all the different parts and pieces that they weld into the chassis. And it goes through like a little bit of an assembly line there. They've got a body department, which looks like a surgical room. Everything has its place. It was so impressive. The 2 Mustangs that are down here have 3 sets of body panels for everything. And you go back to looking at the 64 and you can see the whole new livery. Well, think about it. You've got somebody who has to vinyl the door, vinyl the quarter panel, vinyl the rear fascia, the wing, the roof, the nose, you name it. Now you're going to multiply that by 3
Per car.
multiply that by a second car.
Exactly.
And that's a lot that goes on, a lot that goes in the haulers. Oh, and by the way, they had to re-vinyl the haulers as well. So you just can't say the season's over in October, let's start pulling out the vinyl and doing wraps in November. This has a long rollout process. But I love the new livery on the Mustang.
It is sharp. Looks great. Right now it's Dennis Olsen in the 64 that we're watching go around. We talk about the fact this is an Evo version of the Mustang. That Evo kit targeted improving aerodynamics, kinematics, and braking. The front dive planes that they've added to the front of the car, that's probably the most noticeable visual change. There's a lot of changes under the bodywork and a new braking package as well.
And it started with the nose. You've got the new dive planes. All of a sudden now you're working on air. You're working on how to push the air through and around the car. They were able to go to bigger brakes because you have to remember when they homologated this car, there were certain parameters or certain boxes that they had to stay within. And now that they've had time, now they know what this car needs to take it up a level, and so they went to a different braking package, larger, which also meant they had to buy all new wheels to be able to work with the new larger braking package. So it's always one of those things, when you make a change, there's going to be a net result. You've got to make another change and then another change. And so all the different changes that they've made with their updates, they have been thrilled. So just another one of those teams with high hopes. Looking at what they did last year, win here at the Rolex 24, they won on the streets of Detroit, they won at Indianapolis, so it's been a good 25, but man, the expectations and goals are much loftier for 26.
Another new car for 2026 is this Porsche 911 GT3R, the 992.2. Sometimes you'll see it referred to as an Evo. I think that's not part of the official nomenclature, but that's effectively what it is. And Porsche has rolled out a few improvements. Drivability is something they targeted with this car. Modified aerodynamics to make the car a bit more stable. Software updates. We're not talking about a computer, we're not talking about your phone, we're talking about a race car, but software updates are a huge part of developing a modern race car these days, and a refined steering system as well, with a focus on making the car more accessible to the non-professional driver, the bronze driver, which is a requirement in a lot of series around the world. And you'll see some bronze drivers in GTD this weekend at the Roar, and next weekend, of course, at the Rolex 24. Actually, a few bronzes in GTD Pro, too, that were previously trying to exploit a bit of a drive time rule loophole, but that's actually been closed now. Nevertheless, a few bronzes still electing to run in GTD Pro next week, and that is at their discretion pending IMSA approval. But we talk about the Ford, we talk about the 911. Those are two examples of GT cars that have been updated. And then the GTP Class 2 has gone through some evolutions, with many of the manufacturers bringing something new to the party here this year. Just a slight tweak or a little upgrade here or there.
Oh, I just love it when they pull out. Get a good little hit of sound there. As you can see, the wheel and Cadillac up on jack stands, adjustments going on. They had such a fantastic final quarter of the season. Back-to-back wins, Indianapolis, rode Atlanta, a lot of optimism coming in. And I love Earl Bamber's helmets, the designs that he pulls out. He had Indian feathers on one for pretty much 2025, going back to, Cadillac, the Indians up in Michigan. GM's from Michigan, so he tried to do a little tie-in, and there's going to be a great little story about the helmet, which we'll discuss during our NBC Sports coverage next weekend here at Daytona for the Rolex 24. And that's where you have drivers with their identity being their helmet. There are guys that never change. What they had, if you look at Matty Campbell's helmet, it is pretty much the same helmet for over a decade. And then other guys, it's, I'm driving for so-and-so, hey, whatever you want to do, I don't care. But for the most part, that is their signature, their identity, and they love, being able to, express that. And for us, it's great because it seems like most of the drivers, they fit a template. So it's tough to see who's getting in and getting out in a split second. But when you see the helmet, you're like, oh, okay, that's Albuquerque. Oh, that's going to be Jack Aiken. That's going to be Ricky Taylor. So it's neat when they still have their identity on that. And by the way, we did see yesterday Wayne Taylor, the commander, on top of the pit box on his little perch. I think he had a little cup of coffee. He was looking at all the goings on, and it looked like he was in a good state, maybe a little bit of a flow state. He wasn't having a double head grabber, stressful, almost stroke type moment like Wayne always does.
We've seen that a time or two.
I remember 2 years ago here, Jordan sent me a picture. I said, how's your dad doing? It was the first practice session. And he said this was 8 minutes in, and it was a shot of Wayne with his face in his hands. And I'm like, oh, that's just normal.
Yep, that is another day that ends in Y for Wayne Taylor. There's his son, Ricky, waiting for his turn aboard the 10. By the way, 20 minutes in, we're already a third of the way through this session here. Final hour of an all skate. All drivers, all teams permitted to participate. The final WeatherTech session of the day is a bronze-only session.
So since we're 20 minutes in, let's go ahead and do a little run-through from the scoring. Fill them in where everyone's...
We're back up and running. Apologies to all of you. Thanks for sticking with us, but we had a momentary...
Back up and running, but the fun hasn't stopped.
No, far from it. Just about halfway through the session.
One of the updates we need to give is the fact that there was a little fandango over at the Le Mans chicane. We showed the 93 from Acura Meyer-Shank Racing, and at the time, now Nick Yellowly is in the car now. Oda was in the car.
Yes.
Had a little spin, no harm, no foul, brought it to pit lane, made a driver change. Nick's in the machine now. They've logged 16 laps during this session, and one of the gentlemen I bumped into on my little coffee stroll through the paddock this morning was Philippe Albuquerque. And I said, what's the game plan for today? He said simply, just a couple little things we want to hit on, and so we're going to leave Ricky in the car more than likely the entire session, so that way everything will be comparable to what we've learned before, and then that way we're not jumping around and you might get a little bit of a different opinion. It's the same opinion as far as the whole time frame on the tires, everything else, and he's been in the car 13 laps now in that number 10 machine, so from Wayne Taylor Racing. And when you look down through, you can see the Valkyrie back out there. I know their fans are just going crazy, like it's the Powerball lottery is hit hearing that car out there. But pieces that I saw this morning in the garage all had smiles. I think most folks are really pleased where they are, maybe comparatively to a year ago where I had one top, because it's a lot like your golf game. You show up at the tee and you start firing away with a Big Bertha instead of going to the range and maybe knocking a little bit of rust off. And for all these teams, preparation has been so key with so many changes. I had one driver show me he was wearing a watch that recorded all of his numbers, and he had a crash, and when he had the crash, his heart rate spiked to 182. Whoa. And it just shows what they put their bodies through. yet they get out of the car and they barely break a sweat.
I think, at least momentarily, we might be back up on the stream. We've been talking to the folks here live in person at Daytona International Speedway. But if you've stuck with us, thank you. Apologies as we work through some technical difficulties. Everything's connected to the internet these days, and if the internet goes away, you're left without a whole lot to work with. But here's the situation. 16 minutes or thereabouts to go in this session. Final 1 hour session of or before the 24 for most of the field. There is a bronze driver only session still to come later on today. Porsche Penske 1-2. Kevin Estra, Felipe Nasser in those two cars, 6 from 7. Then it's the two Cadillac Wayne Taylor Racing cars, 10 and 40. They are 3rd and 4th. Kevin Magnussen 5th for BMW M Team WRT. In LMP2, United Autosports has its number 2 car at the top of the time chart. It's been there regularly this week. Pietro Fittipaldi quick for Pratt Miller Motorsports in car 73. And Pierre for AF Corsa USA is 3rd. Era Motorsport with Jacob Abel as the car driver, now behind the wheel. And then the 37 from Intersport Racing is 5th with John Field currently driving. Joey Hand, real quick, is the quickest in GTD. 2nd, Mason Filippi. That is a Mustang from a Corvette. Then it's Philip Ellis, Ricardo Pera, and Aaron Thielitz. And in GTD Pro, Kenny Hopple still the quickest for 75 Express. Chris Meese, Antonio Garcia, Fabian Schiller, and Tommy Milner the top 5 in that class with 15 minutes and 20 seconds to go.
I can't believe how fast this session is blowing by. You saw the 60 on pit lane. Scott Dixon was getting out, logging a few laps. You can see the 60 car. We'll check and see who got in. And some people were talking about the Meyer-Shank team and how the impact guns were lighting up. And you could see it on that stop as well. And I'll bet you that those guns have torque sensors on them, and that's why you're seeing the lights, which we will talk more next week in our NBC Sports coverage of the Rolex 24. I'm just saying, not that I know anything, but that's on my to-do list for our coverage next week.
We can't quite do show and tell in the same way on IMSA Radio, but I imagine it'll come up a time or two. However you choose to join us for the race. If you're here in the States watching Matt and all of our friends on NBC and Peacock, and then the rest of the IMSA Radio crew is en route now. John Heinhoff, I saw a couple of people asking about him. He's en route from Dubai, where he was busy calling the 24 Hours of Dubai this weekend. The rest of the crew will be on site here in a couple of days' time. A couple of different options for how you can tune in over the course of the 24-hour race and really all weekend long in the build-up to the Rolex 24.
So Dixon had gotten out of the 60. Colin Brown's gotten in.
We're talking about drivers who keep their helmets the same year after year. Earlier, Colin Brown's one of those. It's got the Lone Star of Texas on it, but its colors are inspired by the helmet of Fermin Velez, who Colin's father Jeff engineered with Team Scandia longer ago than I care to admit.
And he always tries to keep that theme. He loves those colors, and that's his brand identity. I love his workout program as well. At his house, he has, a simulator. He's got different pieces of equipment, and then he's also got a cold water dunk tank in the next room over, and he utilizes that as well. And when I was looking at the temperature on that, I was like, wow. And that thing was just sitting there bubbling, waiting for the next time he wanted to jump in. But that's all part of the process of what these guys do, these men and women, to be at the peak so that their bodies can go through every different area that they're challenged. And it's also neat, though, just to see different philosophies. And There are some guys that really don't do a whole lot, but there are others that are just machines.
Different strokes for different folks, right?
I mean, you look at Nick Tandy, he's in shape, but he's a beer and wing kind of guy. But he's a
my
farmer.
kind of guy.
He's a farmer, so, you know, I was laughing. I was talking with one team manager. He said, you know, we're doing our Zoom, our debrief, and where is Nick? Nick's in a tractor. He's got his phone propped up, and you know, you can see the background of different people's offices and this and that. It's almost like that video that you see on the internet that said you can zoom in from anywhere,
right? And
the guy's at an amusement park or wherever else, while everybody else is sitting at their desk. But you know, that's Nick. He's a farmer, and one of his childhood heroes growing up was the late Dale Earnhardt. And Nick and his brother Joe, they would sit there and watch the NASCAR coverage as kids over in the UK, and Nick picked Dale Earnhardt as his favorite. His brother Joe picked Bill Elliott, the red car. And so he was always an Earnhardt fan. And so coming here and then winning here took on an even a greater impact and special for him, that connection, because that was his guy growing up. Because many people don't realize Mr. 24 started out racing ovals and with a Mini, and so that's where he started. But this is where he is. And this year he'll be in the 77 at AO Racing, back in a GT. Holy smokes, that's going to be exciting.
I think so too. That team, certainly with some changes in the driver lineup, but they are loaded for bear. Championship winning team in GTD Pro a couple of years ago. AO Racing won in LMP2 last year here at IMSA. I love that shot because for a brief moment at least, you had all three categories, if you will, in one picture. The GTP car going way up high on the 31 degrees of banking. It's the top class just motoring on by. Then you had the LMP2 car with the GTD class, GT3 spec car to the inside, just showing the speed disparity between the classes, which is what makes sports car racing so much fun. And this race, such a challenge. 60 cars entered for next weekend. Unlike Le Mans, where it's a large, sprawling track, plenty of opportunity to pass one another. Here, it's much more condensed. The traffic density in IMSA, and in this race in particular, creates a massive challenge. So, again, these testing sessions here are extremely important for new drivers, maybe, drivers who come from a single-seater background or from a NASCAR background where they don't do multi-class racing regularly, to get a sense of closing speed, to get a sense of what cars in other classes are likely to do, so that they're better prepared for when it really counts next weekend. 6.5 minutes to go. What do you say, we crank it up one more time, or do you got another?
As Dougie Fresh would say, 6 minutes, 6 minutes. Let's go.
All right, we'll lay out and let you listen for the next couple of minutes here as we close out the final all-skate of the World Before the 24. unfortunately, a red flag. No reason why has been communicated to us just yet, but that puts a bit of a damper on the end of this session. 3 minutes to go. Testing here for next week's Rolex 24 at Daytona. Glad you folks could join us and hope you enjoyed the sights and the sounds. And IMSA has decided this session will not be resumed, so the checkered flag and the red flag simultaneously. Matt, this has been fun. We didn't know we were going to be doing this until a few hours before last night when we did the night practice, and we figured we'd do it again this morning.
We had dinner in Daytona. I wish I had known, because I would have gone over to Mr. Witch Deli and got some of my favorite pizza. We could have had that last night. But looking at today, just looking ahead to next weekend, you know, one thing we didn't get a chance to mention earlier was the FAF number 9 Lamborghini Caldarelli was in the car during this session, and they always do so much for the fans. And look at the fans throughout the infield already rolling in. In about another hour, that entire roof over the garages will be packed. But FAF with the Plaid, they've got the new car coming at Sebring, and they always try to be so fan friendly. And the fans will get a chance to choose the livery which they are going to utilize up at Road America later this summer. They've already got I saw it this morning. I can't give away. I'm just going to say, cannot wait for Sebring, especially if you love the Plaid, you love that Canadian tradition. It's going to be fantastic. But 4 different times this year, they are going to have a little bit different special livery. But the season long will debut at Sebring. But I can't wait to see, because the fans get a chance to vote, like we talked yesterday, on what that livery will be for Road America. So can't wait for next weekend. It's going to be fun.
So much to look forward to, Matt. It's been a blast. Great to have you folks joining us. Over 10,000 strong here today. By the way, the cause of the red flag, the number 21A of Corsa Ferrari stopped on track. Antonio Fuoco driving. There wasn't enough time to get that car recovered. That's why the session comes to an end early. Still to come today here at Daytona, BP Racing SportsCar Challenge, race number 2 here on the high banks. Race 1 was a lot of fun. And then next week, the big show, the Rolex 24 at Daytona 2026 edition. So long.